Thank you very much. So we'll continue in that case. We'll welcome you all here. I'll just put up the screen now. So with the second in our series of workshops, which are discussing and looking at the subject of Welsh and bilingual education for all, we are focusing today on looking at experiences of individuals who are members of families who have moved to Wales for different reasons, with children, and to what extent the awareness of Welsh and bilingual education, and to what extent also the process of joining Welsh or bilingual education is part of that experience. So that's the intention today, for us to look at that. So Gwennan in a moment will be giving us a bit more context. And then for those of you, this is a series, so Byddig will be saying a few words summarizing the first workshop we held. And I can't see the chat, but I think in the chat, Kelly is going to be posting the link for the agenda in full, so you'll be able to follow that. And then we'll have presentations by a number, we've got 4 presenters. We're so glad to welcome them here today to talk about their experiences. And then we've got a discussion regarding different questions that Gwennan will be presenting. So just to for you to remember, this is the second in our series of workshops. We started with quite a general discussion. We're focusing today on personal experiences, and then the intention with the following workshops will be to focus more detail on the primary sector, the secondary sector, and so forth. So I'm going to pass over now to Gwennan to say a few words. Good morning, everyone. Warm welcome to you here to this workshop, and to those of you who've returned for the second time, thanks again for coming. I don't want to repeat everything I said last, but in brief, just to say that the workshops we're holding at the moment, they derive from research that I have been undertaking, and also Iaith have been undertaking on immigrants and the Welsh language, and specifically opportunities for adults to learn Welsh. And that is my main field of research. And what I found was that much of the wish and desire there was a lot of wish and desire to learn Welsh, but not a lot of information and direction available. And also differences in attitudes between people in the community, even language tutors or people in the government who were unsure whether immigrants wanted to or needed to learn another language except for English. So my research has challenged that perception to an extent, and I feel that the Welsh language and other languages are important to people who live in Wales, and there are some people here who are proof of that. I'm sure they'll tell you later. One other thing that came out of the research was the connection between the adults, who are often parents, and children, and the children's education. And although many of the adults and parents we interviewed wished to learn Welsh, and many of them said that was because of their children learning Welsh, many of them didn't understand Welsh language, and their children ended up going to English language schools, and perhaps they didn't realize or think that Welsh language was an option for them for whatever reason. So our desire is to look beyond that, to look at what the problem is, what the challenges are, and what the opportunities are for immigrants to have more information and more opportunities, and what some of the challenges are behind their decisions to choose Welsh language, Welsh medium education or bilingual or not. So we'd like to do more research in this field as a result of these work. And one other thing, of course, is that's important is that we're collecting information, and that's why you're here. We're hoping to hear your voices later on, so that we can create a national network to share that information. And another objective which may come from these research workshops is the creation of more resources to raise awareness of individuals about the Welsh language and bilingual education as is identified in these points. So before we move forward, for those of you who are new here today, it might be an idea for us just to have a quick summary of what we discussed at the first meeting back in November. So would it be okay then for us to pass over to Bidig just to give us a quick summary of the first workshop before we move forward?
Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much. Thank you and welcome to you all here today. I'm going to speak in summary about some of the points we discussed. It was clearly noted that current arrangements don't succeed in reaching everyone who wishes to receive Welsh medium education. There were structural problems with the provision due to a lack of planning body for the statutory education stats. And although the Mudiad Meithrin lead on that sector, post-16 and higher education in Welsh, there's no body in the statutory sector beyond officers within Welsh Government. Parents who are refugees or asylum seekers don't have any understanding that they have an access to Welsh language education for their children. Many refugees take for granted that the Welsh medium education is available in. They are surprised to understand that there are Welsh medium schools available to them. Some agencies that work with refugees and asylum seekers don't promote Welsh medium education. There's a lot of work to be done with partners. There needs to be consistency and education pathways from whichever countries refugees or asylum seekers come to Wales from. There is information about education available online and on websites of local authorities, libraries within some authorities, and that's where there are differences in the level of information happening. Support for families of children receiving Welsh medium education is essential. There is and a number of education officers working with refugees and asylum seekers to also promote opportunities for Welsh medium education, but there was speaking also of facing problems. But people forget that many refugees come from, or asylum seekers come from bilingual or multilingual countries and can learn 2 languages at once. There's a need to increase the number of teachers from ethnic minority backgrounds in schools, and there's a need to ensure that information about education is available in various languages. There was talk of Newport County Council had information available in 12 languages. There were concerns that there's not a lot of information about Welsh medium education available and that bodies needed to provide more information.
Diolch, Bidig.
Thank you, Bidig. Great. Excellent. So that's a summary. I think that's available as a document that we've sent over email as well. If you want more information, you're welcome to have a copy of that document. And just before we move forward to our contributors today, I'd just like to remind you there will be an opportunity for everyone to discuss and ask questions later on. We have drawn up some questions to think about. We don't have to stick to these solely, but they just help us to steer the conversation. So there's 4 questions there, namely, what helps access to Welsh and bilingual education? What are the barriers to accessing Welsh bilingual education in your experience or view? How can we encourage international migrants to choose Welsh bilingual education? One thing to remind you, of course, migrants, immigrants is a big word, of course, and for purposes of these workshops, we're focusing on international migrants rather than migrants within the British Isles. But of course, there are connections between both as well. And final question, how do we ensure the best support for international migrants, both children and parents or carers in these schools? So you can think of some ideas, answers to those questions in the meantime. And then with that, I think I'll turn to the people I've asked to contribute today. We've got 4 people. I think one of them is having trouble joining us. Hopefully we can sort out those problems soon. But maybe I can just introduce you, first of all, to Gosia, who is here, hopefully.
Hello? Higham.
Hi, would you like to start and say a few words about who you are, but more than that, of course, your experience with Welsh medium education and the experience of your family and so forth. So thank you very much for coming today. Over to you.
Okay, diolch. Nes i
Okay,
benderfynu
thank you very much.
hwnna in Saesneg, a gobeithio bod hwnna'n iawn.
I'm going to do the presentation in English, so I hope it's okay.
And I'm a mother of 5, and that's important. And 2 of my youngest children are in the Welsh medium education, and that wasn't easy. So when we came to Wales many years ago, we didn't even consider Welsh medium education for our kids, and partly because we weren't aware of the fact that there were Welsh medium schools, I think, and also English was our priority because the kids didn't speak English. And I must say I had a lot of help from through my health visitor. So she offered, while in Cardiff, she offered a lot of advice on playgroups, schools, none of them Welsh. It wasn't on the table for me. So, and then when my kids started English medium school, they were teaching Welsh there, which I learned the hard way. And I thought an ideal system, truly bilingual, well, I was wrong. So when my daughter was in year 4, I saw that that wasn't working. She couldn't speak Welsh. The quality of Welsh teaching was really bad. So I had that idea of immersion. I wanted her to go to for a day, a week or 2 to a Welsh speaking school. But that idea was met with a very strong opposition from the English teachers, and they were absolutely against it. And I remember the comment from the teacher I really liked, and she said, "Why are you so fixated on Welsh?" And the only answer I could give to that was, "Why aren't you? You're Welsh." So fast forward a few years, I'm homeschooling my 2 youngest kids, and I could see that the only way to, and they were born here, and the only way for them to actually truly speak Welsh was to put them into Welsh medium education. And I got a lot of help from the least likely person, the council worker who was responsible for homeschooling. And she did everything for me. She did the research. She checked if there were spaces in my catchment area. There were none. So she went to other school, arranged all the paperwork. But then I decided to actually meet the head teacher, because you can imagine, I'm sending my 2 kids with the foreign sounding names into a Welsh primary, and they were in the middle of year 2 and year 4, which is very old by the Welsh primary standards, and they couldn't speak Welsh. So the meeting was lovely, but during that meeting I was asked more than once, a few times, whether I could really grasp the idea this is a Welsh school as opposed to Welsh English school. So we don't teach Welsh here, we speak Welsh here, and of course I answered yes, that's why I want to send my kids to that school. And then I got a question, so what about the Welsh? Are they fluent? And I said, I wouldn't call them fluent, no, they're not fluent. And the Welsh is, I would say, better than the Latin, worse than the French. And they said, oh, we take them. So it was like the way of proving my worth to enter the Welsh medium education. So, but my kids are the success story. They fully they fluent Welsh speakers. My son is in year 8 now, and no one knew that he just got, before coming to COM, he just got 2 years of Welsh education. He's as good as the other kids. So it's doable. And when they started school, I asked for help, because the question if they could speak the language is not a question in an English medium school. Nobody asks if the kids speak English. They just give them help. 6 months later, they fluent. And then I asked the head teacher if they could get help, and she wasn't aware of that help because she didn't need to. We were the first foreign family in that school, and she did ask. She applied for funding, and they got help. So it's doable. So that's my story. That's for me. And sorry for English.
A dim angen bod yn sori. Diolch yn fawr
No
iawn.
need to be sorry. Thank you so much, Gosha, for your contribution, which is interesting, and I believe there will be questions arising. You're welcome to ask further questions to Gosha later on, but maybe in the meantime, we'll just pass over straight away to the next person. Hopefully it's okay for me to turn to you, Izati. Are you happy to just introduce yourself and say a bit about your story and your family and Welsh medium education? Yeah, no problem. Hello, Shemai everyone. My name is Izati. I come from Brunei originally. After getting married, I've been living in Wales for 5 years. I've learned the Welsh language since that time as well. I have one son, Idris, who is 3 years old. Since he's been a baby, I've been speaking language of Brunei with him. No Welsh with him, but my husband's been speaking Welsh to him. I decided to send Idris to a Welsh medium nursery, and I'm going to send him to a Welsh medium school because my husband and his family speak Welsh. So it's an important thing to me to send him to a Welsh medium school. I've also chosen to send Idris to a Welsh medium nursery because I'm aware of, I'm familiar with the Welsh language system. He's been in the Cylch TV since he was a baby. And home, I speak Welsh to my husband, but I speak Brunei to my son, Idris. Idris can speak 3 languages now: Welsh, Brunei, and English. Most of the time, he speaks Welsh because he uses and hears more Welsh, talking to family in the nursery as well, and also with cartoons on the television, the Q program, and he's also read a lot of Welsh books. So there's a lot of support to putting this into Welsh media education because he has a strong foundation since he's been a baby. One thing I have been worrying about, or I was worrying about since he's been a baby, is what's going to happen if he doesn't speak my language and speak Bruneian. But yeah, he still speaks Bruneian, and I'd be more strict when he starts talking Welsh to me. What I've done is if he speaks Welsh to me, I answer in Bruneian, so he knows that I understand the Welsh, but that I don't want him to speak Welsh to me, but he can speak Welsh to everyone else. So yes, he's learned quickly with other languages, such as like a sponge, really. So I'm not worried about sending him into Welsh medium education. So yeah, that's what I've got to say. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you very much to Izati. Many interesting things in your experience, and I think a very important point in terms of supporting other languages, and how that's a a factor and something that needs to be discussed as well. I know from the research that many people in learning Welsh asked, how can I support my my own languages as well? So there's a lot of a need for information and multilingualism in general, I think. So thank you very much. I hope it'll be okay now for me to turn to Catherine. Are you okay to just say a few words about your experience coming to Wales, the Welsh language, and also Welsh medium education, please? Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Catherine. I come from Uganda originally, and well, my sister-in-law works for Welsh government. So once she had the opportunity to say, oh, why it'd be an idea for you to learn Welsh. And at the time, it was not expensive to learn. There were many opportunities. That's why we decided to learn Welsh. And then I had my son and my daughter and decided to take them to a Welsh medium school. In my opinion, learning Welsh is not easy. It wasn't easy at the beginning. I was just blank. I couldn't pronounce things or spell things, so it was really difficult at the start. But with time, it's become easier now. But with the children now going to a Welsh medium school, Ysgol y Wern in Cardiff, the problem is that they don't like to speak Welsh with me. I'm not sure why. I suppose they think of speaking Welsh as oppressive, because in school they say, you know, right, you need to speak Welsh now in the yard all times. So, you know, sometimes I say, do you like to speak Welsh with me? And they say, no, we speak Welsh only at school, no outside of school. But also, when I say, oh, I speak Welsh, people say, oh, well done you. They speak quickly sometimes, and sometimes I don't understand things, and they turn to English. And also, well, teachers sometimes speak Welsh to me, but most of the time they just speak English. And also people say to us, oh, why are you learning Welsh? I prefer to learn something like French or Spanish or something else, not Welsh. So that's a problem. They do make me feel, I don't feel confident anyway in speaking Welsh with people who speak fluently, because they talk quickly. But especially during the lockdown, it was important to understand Welsh, because everything in the house, all the learning was happening in the house. Homework was difficult, so learning Welsh was important at the time because I'm not sure if I've been able to do it without having learnt Welsh. So that was important. Yeah. So I'm just moving ahead on with the Welsh. The problem can be that people say, "Oh, well, everyone speaks English. There's no point to learning Welsh." That's my experience. Anyway. Thank you, Catherine. That's really interesting. Definitely, last time I met Catherine, you weren't speaking Welsh as well as now, so well done you. And many interesting points. Remember, you'll be welcome to ask more questions. We did have another person, but unfortunately, Mohammed was having problems connecting, so we won't be able to hear from him today. But maybe before we move forward to the discussion, maybe one or two things from me. Obviously my work looks at adults, and I don't have expertise yet on children and the access of immigrants to Welsh medium education. But like I said, many of the adults we interviewed had children and were asking me a lot of questions about Welsh medium education. At the time, didn't have much information about what it was. And also, I think, as I said before, the feeling that Welsh medium education was for a specific group of people and not available for them. Mohammed is trying to join us. I'm not sure if we'll be able to listen to him. So just as you think about the questions, maybe I can transfer over Catherine, and maybe I'll just give Mohammed a few minutes to see if there's any way of him joining us. If not, maybe Catherine, you could lead on the questions.
Yeah, felly diolch yn fawr.
Yes, well, thank you. So welcome everyone. This is the opportunity to discuss the questions. If you've received the link in the chat, you'll hear or you'll see the questions there in the agenda. Excuse me, sorry, I've had to run downstairs and back down quickly. So I'm sorry for being out of breath. Yes, so this is an opportunity for us to discuss. These are the 4 lead questions, but our speakers today have raised a number of points, haven't they? So you're welcome to put them in the chat or just to raise your hand so that we can invite you to contribute. So would anyone like to kick things off with any response, first of all, to the experiences of some of the speakers? You're welcome to contribute in Welsh or in English, of course, this morning.
Oh, bore da, Catherine.
Good morning, Catherine. I forgot to put my hand up. Don't worry, just go for it. You want to show us, just to, I'm trying to press that now. It doesn't seem to be working. Technology at its best. I think that's working now. We can see you now. Oh, there we go. Well, just to make observations rather than questions, I think. I'm sure everyone across Wales has the same challenges and the same experiences. And I suppose from the first workshop, what we're talking about was the need for some sort of body to coordinate all of that. I think the guests today have identified that. But thinking as well, I work for Cardiff County Council. I've been a teacher for over 20 years, teaching English to refugees and new arrivals to the secondary sector in English and also Welsh. And I work for the county now in terms of the Ethnic Minority and Traveller Achievement Service, and don't actually have as much involvement now with the Welsh medium schools in the city. But I think from what I'm hearing is there's a piece of work to be done there as well regarding the response parents receive from teachers or head teachers. We obviously hope that everyone would be more than happy to have everyone within their schools, but there is a theme that arises every now and again, and these workshops have identified that, is that there is a bit of an attitude that they have to have something additional in order to be able to attend those schools, and I think that's very disappointing to hear. I think teachers within the Welsh education sector in Cardiff, they teach Welsh to children, to hundreds of children as a second language, as many come from non-Welsh speaking homes, and lots of them are specialists in the field of language. So I think there's a need for a bit of work there, not everyone obviously, but about that attitude towards people who come from a minority background who want to go to the Welsh medium school, so that there's no barriers there at all. I think it's disappointing to hear that people are saying these things, and I've heard it today, but it was obviously a theme in the other workshop as well. And I think those Welsh speakers need to have a good look at what they're doing in interviews with parents and what their expectations are in order to move things forward, because it's not acceptable.
Na, yn union, mae hwnna'n...
No, of course, that is an important point, isn't it? Number of people have shared that experience of being at the receiving end of unfortunate attitudes amongst some Welsh medium schools. Does everyone have a more positive experiences? Actually, have you? What's your experiences in terms of the attitudes of staff and to the fact that you speak other languages as well?
Dwi wedi cael profiad positif.
I have had the positive experience really since I started. So 2 years ago, I didn't speak Welsh as well, but I remember they helped me to choose which class I could go to help with speaking Welsh. So not much, but maybe because I started speaking Welsh with them, I'm not sure, but I have had a lot of positive experiences in terms of Welsh medium education. That's good to know. Does anyone else feel that they have positive support and a welcome? Well, I think that when someone learns Welsh, the more doors open to learn or opportunities to speak Welsh, just more opportunities. I'm not sure how to.
More opportunities come up when you start, yeah. So, well, dyna
So that's a positive thing, yeah. My tutor says that you know, you can do something for free, or you can go on a Saturday course or clubs, reading clubs. There's more opportunities once you started learning. I agree with Catherine, because I realize how large the community of Welsh learners is. They've helped me a lot with developing Welsh language speaking skills.
my profiad, wel, in Gymraeg nawr. My profiad hollol positif fi gyda.
I have a completely positive experience with learning Welsh, and there were many opportunities actually to speak Welsh, and I must say that Welsh speakers are sometimes invisible, and when I know them, I know that they speak Welsh because it's like a Welsh language community. But without an Orientation, maybe you don't know that they speak Welsh. And then I wanted to say something about schools and attitudes from schools. And I teach in a Welsh-medium school as an English teacher, and there was an immersion class in the school. So they start in year 7 now without Welsh, and there are some success stories there so that they can stand or they can sit their A levels in Welsh actually. That's been better when I started with my children. That's why I wanted to share.
Sorry, na I roed y fideo ymlaen hefyd.
Sorry, I'll put the video on as well. I don't know on Zoom how to put my hand up, so it's okay for me to come in. Yes, everyone's welcome to just start speaking.
Dwi'n falch iawn o fod yma.
I'm very glad to be here. There's many things that have been said that have touched on many Persian. I am a English coordinator for speakers of other languages, part of the Welsh Immigration Partnership, which means that I support local authorities across Wales who are rehoming refugees, especially on the UK resettlement programme and programmes that are upcoming now in terms of finding homes for people who are here from Afghanistan. But I also work on and support people who are here with the Hong Kong British International Overseas Visa. And because of the work that I often have with Olwen in my work, I'm very aware that we don't ensure that that offer of Welsh education is given clearly enough to refugees. And I think we are guilty of feeling they're here, they've had traumatic experiences, which is of course perfectly correct. Learning English is enough for them, we can't offer Welsh as well. I've also seen that Cyril McAvoy is here from Addysg Oedolion Cymru, and I know that Addysg Oedolion Cymru is currently offering Wsol courses, as they use, called as an introduction to Welsh medium education or the Welsh language for those who are still learning English. But what you say about being multilingual is completely true. There's no barrier to people from being learning Welsh well, and we should be finding a way of giving local authorities the confidence to feel that they could be saying, look, if you'd like, you can consider Welsh medium education as well. That's where I see the weakness, really. The information is not reaching the families who are here as refugees because the local authorities think, oh, we have to make sure that we learn English first. They have to be able to speak well enough to find work and be independent. And depending on what community you live with, the Welsh language is maybe not seen as an advantage to everyone either. But I do remember one thing that was said to me in the northwest, by a lady who worked as in the Welsh language unit on Anglesey, where children were immersed in the Welsh language. And of course, not just children of refugees, there were children from England, from Portugal, from Poland, who were immersed in the Welsh language, so that they then felt more comfortable in the education system that existed on Anglesey. I remember this person who was from Syria originally was helping by supporting the children who were there from families from Syria. She told me how important she considered the Welsh language to be, and when she heard, and she would hear because the hospital in Bangor, she was there because of the university, when she heard someone speak Arabic in a supermarket, her heart would sing because she heard her own language. And so she said, that's how the community is going to feel if I can speak Welsh. Thinking, especially in some communities, being able to speak that language opens doors to integration that wouldn't exist otherwise. And in communities where the Welsh language is less prominent, there are still opportunities, definitely, especially for certainly for children, when it comes to finding work in the future. Yeah, so I'll leave it there for now. I just feel there's like a lot I want to say, but I'm going to let someone else come in now. Come in later on. Thank you. When you get an opportunity, there's 2 hands up. Eiri next, and then Junghing next. Eiri first. Thank you. Well, I'm here on behalf of the Centre for Welsh Language Learning for Adults. I'd like to say it's lovely to hear the positive experience of Isatagosha and Catherine, but it also saddens me to hear that Catherine has not had that encouragement from school teachers in terms of learning Welsh, and there's a lot of blame there on Welsh language speakers for turning to English very often rather than speaking a bit slower. So I think there's a place for us to be teaching fluent Welsh speakers to, to respect learners and to encourage them rather than turning automatically over to English. Just quickly, I'm going to talk about one project that's ongoing with the Welsh Language Learning Centre. We're going to turn some of our courses into the languages that are spoken most prominently by refugees and asylum seekers. So we're not going to take it for granted that everyone speaks English. There'll be courses, for example, through the medium of Arabic and other languages. So, that'll be happening conjointly with Say Something Welsh, and hopefully by the next meeting, I'll be able to share more information about that. That's excellent. It'd be excellent to hear more about that because it's so important, isn't it, that people feel that they have access to the Welsh language through their own languages. That's key. Excellent. That's great to hear about that. So thank you very much, Eiri. Right, so Junghing.
Yes. Yes. I'm sorry, I cannot speak any Welsh, so I will use English. Yeah.
Can we see you, Tung?
Yeah,
Tunghing,
one second.
Yeah,
Yes,
it'd be lovely to see your face as well.
1 second. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because I only can speak from what I heard from my friend, because my friend just came to the I think he now living in Swansea. He came here with the new British National Overseas visa, the BN visa. But when he came here with the family, but he found it quite difficult to because there's not so much of support for them. Particularly quite difficult for him to find the bilingual school for their children, because actually he wants to send their children to a bilingual school. So, and then he found that it also quite difficult for him to find information to speak, to learn Welsh. I think so I think at one point he told me that he hoped there were some sort of induction program for those that come here with a visa, because I understand, because I work with refugee and asylum seekers, so I know that there are much more support if those immigrants come to the UK as a refugee and asylum seeker, but there are not many support for those come here with a visa. So he will say that if there induction for those new immigrants, that would be helpful, particularly if the government can provide them more information about the bilingual education, or even for adults, where can they learn Welsh? That would be helpful. Yeah, that's the thing that I would like to share. Thank you.
Diolch.
Thank you, Junghing. That is really important, that there is a clear difference in the information that can be available, especially maybe to those who may be in the, like in the case of your friend Tung-Hing, who comes from Hong Kong, I'm assuming, or China with a visa. There's a lack of information and lack of support. Is anyone able to maybe respond to that? Someone who is maybe more aware than me of the situation in terms of responding to different. Well, I'll try and come in on that. I think Tung-Hing mentioned the Hong Kong B&O visa that his friend came over with, and in the immigration partnership, we have a Hong Kong B&O visa coordinator in position, and we are currently working on part of our website that will offer the information, the links, and I'd emailed the details to the coordinator the other day saying, make sure you flag up that education through the medium of Welsh is available, put the links up. And also just also about the Foundation for Wales, which is different to how young children in Hong Kong receive their information, start receiving their education. There's more emphasis on developing mental skills and learning through play and experiences. So that website is in the process of being developed. Well, maybe I'll send the link to everyone, actually. I'm sending a link to Tung-Hing to our website and our page, and the contact details are there. But I do agree, we don't have enough information about people who've arrived here from Hong Kong. We can't reach everyone. We're in the process of putting that information out, and this is happening across the UK. But one thing I have picked up on from the few who have been in touch with me personally is there is a great deal of interest in jobs, for example, with local authority or with Welsh government, where the Welsh language is beneficial or sometimes essential for that position. Often people from Hong Kong arrive with the skills, specific skills for those jobs. That's the kind of work maybe they've done before they've left. And I do believe, and I know that I'm in contact with learning Welsh about this, about this area. I have flagged up that support in the Cantonese language, I think, would be extremely beneficial, because I see a great number of people from Hong Kong coming here and they grasp the language straight away because that's the kind of jobs that they want to. I don't know if that helps Tung-Hing at all or helps the friend, but I will put those details in the chat. Great. Thank you very much, Erica. Tung-Hing, would you like to respond? Or
yeah, I think it would be great if they can put up the information, because I think most of the people, they came to the quite a lot of people that I know, they come to the UK through the B&O visa. They already speak a reasonable level of English. But the main problem is sometimes in life, when they try to look for a job, sometimes they require for the Welsh language skill. It make it quite difficult for them to qualify for those jobs, because Welsh language is not a compulsory. In Hong Kong, we don't learn Welsh when we're a kid.
Okay, yeah, diolch.
thank you.
Thank you.
Cyril, I think your hand's up. Hi everyone, my name's Cyril and I work for Addysg Oedolion Cymru. I manage the Usol project, which is Welsh education for children of refugees and asylum seekers who speak other languages.
Some of my experiences. Sorry, I can't talk about all of them in Welsh. But yeah, so we've been running this project now since last year. We piloted it last summer, and we've launched a second course recently that's still ongoing. And just to echo really what Gwen Ann's been saying, and also picking up on some of the really useful comments from Tung Hing, you know, I think what we get from our learners is that there is real interest in learning Welsh. There's you know, learners are really keen to sort of use Welsh even in their messages with me, their emails, you know, and it's particularly amongst parents whose children are in school, because I think they've suddenly realised on sending their children to school, actually this is a really important part of Welsh life, and also we want to be able to support our child. But I do think one sort of big gap that Tung Hing was picking up on is there needs to be a sort of general sort of awareness raising around just Wales's distinctiveness and why it is a bilingual country, and also the importance of Welsh for jobs and employability. That really, you know, a lot of people just seem to have no understanding of that, and I've been sort of told by people who have come to this country, they just would have really liked to have had a lot more information about that from the beginning, and I think that would then you know, motivate a lot more people to learn Welsh as well.
Diolch.
Thank you.
Yeah, mae Gosian cytuno efo hynna.
Yeah, gosh, agreeing with that. Carolina, I know your hand's up.
Thanks, Catherine. I'm sorry, my camera is off. I'm on a very old computer and the camera stopped working some time ago.
Lun hyfryd ohona ti, Carolina.
Diolch yn fawr. I wanted to share some observations from my own research. I do not live in Wales, but I conducted some research on Polish migrants in Wales, learning or not learning Welsh and why. And in my Aberystwyth study, well, it transpires that actually a lot of Polish people, especially those who decided to settle there for good, who have families and children, are very much aware of the importance of Welsh in Wales for the culture, for the jobs, employment, and so on and so forth. But they still, at least in Aberystwyth, they were still very reluctant to send their children to Welsh medium schools. They tended to send their children to Welsh medium nurseries, but then when it came to choosing primary and secondary schools, they decided to choose the English medium schools. And there were two main reasons for that. First of all, my friends had sent their children there and they were happy. So they didn't even think about what choices they had. And the second major concern was that they wouldn't be able to help their children with homework if it was in Welsh. So I think that what needs to be done here is to make those migrants aware that perhaps there is some other way to help your children with homework. Like Welsh is no different, I would say, or not that much different than any other subjects. Like, can you help your child with maths or science, right? So that's another question. So I think a lot of migrant families are aware of the opportunities or the possibilities with Welsh medium education for their children, but still they are reluctant to take that opportunity for other reasons, which could easily be these problems, or the reluctance could be avoided easily, I think, or rather easily. So I think we need to think about how to encourage those people and raise their awareness about the possibilities of their children getting help in case of problems.
Pwynt pwysig iawn.
Yes, a very important point there, Carolina. Before Gosia comes in, may I ask a bit more to you about your findings? If people in your research had often sent their children to the Welsh-medium, so there were concerns about support in the Welsh. Was that in primary or secondary? Where was the point where they were making that decision?
Primary school. So the children were sent to Welsh medium Ysgol Meithrin, and then they just followed their friends basically in sending their children to the primary school. There's one school in Aberystwyth in particular that is very popular with migrants because it advertises itself as an international school or a school that has a lot of migrant children. And that's where the children tend to be sent to. And then, as Gosia said, after a few years in primary school, the parents do realize that the children learn Welsh, they have some Welsh, but then they know or they feel that the standard of Welsh their children have is not enough to then switch to a Welsh medium secondary school. So they notice that there's a gap in skills, that perhaps their children were not exposed enough to Welsh, and they fear that they would not cope with Welsh, with being taught through the medium of Welsh in the secondary school. Because of the parents' choices, right, the children have then limited opportunities, I would say, in terms of choice of their education.
Diddorol. Felly mae'n yn achos y math yna o
Very interesting. So in the case of that kind of family or that kind of situation, if there were more information shared with families from Welsh-medium staff, maybe in terms of the support that's available. Of course, the Welsh government has been investing more, hasn't it, in support with immersion, for example, for children from different backgrounds, and there's also an emphasis on expanding that from the primary sector in the Welsh medium to the secondary sector in the Welsh medium. So I don't know if there's anyone else who has more awareness of that, who would like to, or who knows how much awareness there is maybe of those concerns and challenges to ensuring that there are children who feel they haven't had enough of a period of time in the primary to have what they need in the secondary. Very interesting. Okay, Gosia, what about you?
Responding to Carolina, actually. Well, we're talking about, I'll respond later, encourage parents, but I think it should be told them how would Welsh help the children's future, because they couldn't see it. I chose Welsh because we're a multilingual family, we added Welsh to the pack and my children were born here. But there was not that information that it would be beneficial in terms of future employment, career opportunities, stuff like that. And then about choosing Welsh school, there are many people that choose Welsh primary school and then switch to English secondary school. And I think there are two reasons for that. First, they are a bit worried about the level of Welsh, whether it's going to be acceptable. And I'm saying that as a former English teacher in a Welsh school. And then in Welsh secondary schools, they have massive problems with employment. So parents could see that the pool of teachers in Welsh school is not as big as in the English one. So I think that's also the problem that needs to be, you need to look at the problem, because parents see, is English medium education better than the Welsh one? So English medium education worked very well for my kids. My daughter is at the first year at Oxford University. And then my two youngest kids, well, the bar is pretty high. So I'm actually looking at the Welsh medium education from that point. And with, as Carolina said, with help from Welsh medium school, everything is bilingual. In my primary school, everything is bilingual for the parents, because 90% of the parents in Rhondda are not from non-Welsh speaking families, so everything is made in English and in Welsh. And sometimes Welsh feels like an addition just to be there, because parents, the majority of parents cannot read Welsh. So yeah, I think those 3 points I wanted to make.
Pwyntiau pwysig, diolch. Diolch i
It's
ti.
important points there, Gosia.
What I find really surprising is that in the interviews I did with the parents, they were very much aware of the cognitive benefits of being able to speak Welsh, of bilingualism. They were very much aware of the importance of Welsh for the culture, for the local community, and for the employment prospects in the future. But still, this did not encourage them to send their children to Welsh medium primary schools. I'm wondering to what extent it's just lack of interest in, or just, you know, my friends did it, so I did it, I'll do it the same way, or other reasons, right? So yeah, okay.
Is it maybe because it's much harder, from my experience, is it much harder to apply for a place in a Welsh school, because there are so many barriers, actually, not even for migrants like me, but people from non-Welsh speaking families. It's
maybe. Maybe.
What would be their barriers, be their rhwystrau, Gosia?
What would the barriers be?
For example, so my kids were in a Catholic school, in a Catholic English medium school before, and the application process is completely different. So because you are just liaised with the school, for the Welsh medium school, you need to go through the council. So that was actually absolutely, I had no idea how to do it, how to approach it. So the council work, because I was homeschooling my kids because of the academic level of the English school, I took them out. I was homeschooling them. So then I had that additional help, actually. So it would take a lot of research, a lot of phone calls, and that kind of stuff, actually, to get to know how to apply.
Okay, great. Kimber, we try to...
Before I turn to you, Carolina, do you still want to come back in, or is your hand just still? No, sorry, that's fine. Just there was a great discussion between you and Gosia there. Before I invite Ruth to talk, I've noticed that Sian notes in chat how active the Mudiad Meithrin are in terms of promoting transfer to the the statutory primary period through the medium of Welsh, and maybe making the point that this Welsh primary sector needs to be more welcoming. Were you responding to Sian, Erica? And that a high number of children in Welsh medium schools go home to non-Welsh speaking households. Yes, maybe something to learn from the experiences of those parents. Well, I was just thinking, I'm still going back to this barrier to parents who are refugees or who have migrated in. But to be completely honest, when I started on my career, I go back many years now, I was teaching in a Welsh medium school in the north. And, you know, very few of the pupils we had went home to homes where Welsh was the language of the family. And understand that, as Catherine mentioned, children maybe don't want to carry on learning Welsh when they go home. That's a challenge. It's been a challenge for Welsh medium school forever. How do we expand the appeal of the Welsh language outside of the walls of the classroom? Because the moment it was break time, even though the children said in English, "What are you going to do for Egwyl?" They spoke English to each other in a social situation if we didn't work very hard on that. So I'm picking up on the point of, you know, when parents are concerned that they won't be able to cope with supporting the child's homework and so forth, it's evident that the number of non-Welsh speaking parents has that's been part of that for years, and children have been going home to that situation for years. And I think we need to ensure as a parent that there will be support from the school and that the schools do that. and they make that completely obvious. That was my point. Sharon Shingen's point is true as well about primary schools, and certainly the experience of my brother's children in the Conwy local authority has been a very positive one, where everyone is immersed in the Welsh language, but then are split, although that's no, they are streamed according to their linguistic ability. So some language units are going to have more linguistic support than others. And that just happens naturally. And just very quickly, sorry, I don't like to take all this time. I remember being out with my nephew and speaking to a friend, and there was a little girl running around, obviously craving some attention, wanting to join in with the discussion, and it turned out she was a child, a pupil at Ysgol Brogwydir, and she just wanted to share the fact that she could speak Welsh, that she knew what we were talking about, and she wanted to put her hand up to me and say, look, I speak Welsh, I go to Ysgol Brogwydir, and she was originally from Poland. And she was completely fluent. I just wanted to put that into discussion as well. Thank you, Erica. That's lovely to hear. Ruth, I know you've been waiting for some time. I'm also aware, though, that Gwenan needs to leave in some 5 minutes or so. So if you don't mind, Gwenan first, then Ruth. Yeah, just to say as well, thank you very much. And I do apologize that I have to leave. There's no way for me to change this. I just wanted maybe I've got it's more of a question, really. I'm very grateful to everyone who's contributed, and it's very evident that there's a lot of work to be done on many levels. And I think in terms of raising awareness of parents who come from refugee and asylum seeker backgrounds, also schools, head teachers. We've also had mention of local councils, maybe any other agencies who deal with these groups of people. And there's a lot going on, and I know that's one of the challenges, but how do we go about raising awareness? What are the ways of doing it? Is it pamphlets? Is it raising awareness sessions? Do you have ideas on how we can start on that process? That's what interests me. I am aware that there is a big gap, and I would love to do something about that. I know there's a lot of excellent things happening in the field of Welsh for adults at the moment. Iris mentioned this. There have been developments in the past years as well, and I know this is just the beginning. But I believe we need to reach out further into I know Cylch Meithrin, Mudiad Meithrin do excellent work as well, but I think we need to do more. Obviously, there's other people we're losing. But do you have ideas of practical things? Maybe I'm apologizing. I might have to go and I won't actually hear the responses, but that's what I had to say. And also, I'd just like to apologize that Mohammed, a Syrian refugee who had hoped to contribute to the discussion, has been having difficulties to join us, so he apologizes. So just thank you very much, and you're welcome to carry on with the discussion. If you have anything to say about that, that'd be wonderful to hear. Thank you. Thank you. Best wishes, Gwenan. Unfortunately, Gwenan has to go to an appointment with her daughter. No possibility to change that, but Gwenan will disappear quietly in a moment. We'll carry on with the discussion. Ruth, would you like to come in first? But maybe Gwenan's question is one for us to think about as well, in terms of what some of the ways are that we can deal with some of these challenges. So if you come in first, and then I see Ellen's hand up as well to contribute in a moment. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so this is I've enjoyed everything that everyone said this morning. It's so important, isn't it? And especially thanks to those who have succeeded to cross the bridge already and continue to do so. I know, looking at the experiences of people from, we're looking at people from countries outside of Wales mainly, but I was following, and this comes up often as someone who works for Immigrant and is at the front line with parents who often raise questions and concerns and so forth. Last night on one of the Facebook groups that we're part of, Denbighshire Mums, excellent places to be a barometer for There's so many different subjects, aren't they? And often we follow the discussion and just try to learn and see if there's anything coming up. But last night in Denbighshire Mums, there was a parent who asked them the usual, we don't speak Welsh at home. I am from Wales, but neither do I speak Welsh. What are your thoughts? What are your experiences on sending your children to Welsh medium school? Well, I thought that question is the same to well, whatever background you're from. If you're non-Welsh speaking, one of the or one or two of the observations raising from them was that there were concerns some had, but when do they actually learn English if they go to Welsh school? How will the standard of their English be? And I think we've got a job of work to do there, of providing parents with confidence as we promote Welsh medium education, they'll still get English.
Many of our Welsh medium schools do better in English at GCSE levels than they do in English medium schools.
That message isn't coming out, I don't think, enough in order to give parents confidence, parents of the young children or children in the immersion period, year 5, year 6, where they're starting to think, oh, you know, maybe I need to send them off to an English school.
They need to speak English properly. So
yeah, I just wanted to contribute that really, because it was something new to me again last night as I followed that discussion on Denbighshire Mums, where there were some 40 or more comments just overnight. Most of the comments, thankfully, were, you know, said they had excellent experiences when sending their children to Welsh medium school, even though they didn't. But there were a few nuggets there where they say how they learn English, when do they learn English, will it be good enough? Well, that's true of whatever country you come from, and I feel like maybe the audience we have today and the next steps we're looking at, it's an opportunity to, I'm not one of these people who likes to talk about bilingual education. I believe strongly that you need to say Welsh medium education, the children will be bilingual or multilingual. So, yeah, I just wanted to contribute that. Is there a place for us to be promoting? Don't be afraid. The English will be of a high standard as well, and possibly even better than you have in English medium schools. Yeah, thank you, Ruth. Very important. I'm sorry, can I just add one thing? I've been thinking a lot about this since, also as a mentor, we work with a project with refugees who have now settled in Denbighshire, but from Syria. And that question was open, the door to that question was opened to me by them because they'd all been placed in a school without a choice. And I don't have enough evidence, but I don't believe that they realized that they had the right to those options and choices to have a Welsh medium education. So yeah, the same sort of thing. The agenda was you must learn English. It hadn't been a question posed to them, and raising that question, point of rights is important, isn't it? In terms of the right to access to things that are Welsh medium, in terms of work opportunities, education opportunities, social opportunities, and community opportunities as well. Thank you, Ruth. That's very important. You can come in later on if you want. Eileen, over to you. Good morning, everyone. I apologize that I missed the first part of the meeting. I've been in a meeting discussing the strategic plans of Welsh in education, a very important element. I'm not sure if you've discussed these already. We haven't, no. All right, okay. So this is your opportunity. This is my opportunity. Well, I have been over the past few months looking at a strategy that every county has now written, and every county has had to note how they're going to be increasing and developing Welsh medium education within their counties over the next 10 years. Reading them has been very interesting. There has been a variety in the plans. What has been interesting maybe in terms of this session is that there is now a responsibility for local authorities with moving to responding to demand, to be stimulating the demand and creating the demand. And we, as a movement of parents for Welsh medium education, we consider our audience to be everyone. You know, we're not promoting to one group of people any more than any other group of people. For us, parents for Welsh medium education is any parent, and that choice is meant to be open to every parent. It's interesting what Ruth is saying, because it's timely as well that we are currently working on our new website, and the intention is for our website as an organization that those elements will be available in community languages. So hopefully we'll be able to create a website where the higher levels of the website can be used to promote and share information, hopefully in about 8 languages in addition to Welsh and English. And as Ruth said, in terms of the questions that are asked by different linguistic communities, I think we have to be aware of the differences that we have between us in terms of the languages, and that the messages that we have to transfer to those linguistic communities are different depending on the different groups and their experiences. And we will be, sorry, I'm touting a bit of business here as well. We would love to receive any assistance we can from anyone from a linguistic community background to help us with this process, to ensure that the language, and I think I said this in the first session, the importance of adapting our core message for the different groups, because we come from different experiences. Our information about Wales will be different. I was talking to a girl yesterday who comes from England originally, never been in Wales before she was 21 after she met her husband, and her knowledge of Wales was, zero, nothing. All she knew was the bridge comes over from to reach South Wales, and that's all. So, our experiences are different, and we need to be adapting the message we have. The things like Ruth mentioned in terms of English as well, and I've been speaking to Olwen, I think, as well about this. The elements of the framework of English as second language, that's also meant to be the framework for Welsh as a second language, the EAL system and the WLA system. And I don't know if we've got consistency across Wales to acknowledge, and it may also be that there's a lack of staff here, a lack of workforce who understand and can feel confident enough to be discussing and dealing with. I know Olwen in Cardiff is fully aware of the system, but it may not be the case. It may not be reflective of the situation across Wales. Might not reflect the situation in other areas. I know it doesn't in my area. So that professional element of ensuring that the workforce understand what Welsh medium education is a theme that's recurring here. But for today, I believe, in terms of the strategic plans for Welsh education, counties are meant to be making a statement in terms of how they're going to be emerging mid and late stage, and it's that mid stage within the primary school where children come into the primary school later than early years, and what's the mechanism that's within the county to support those children. And in the same way, with the later stage, from year 7 onwards, usually only happens in year 7, other than where there's specific needs for later, because the later we go, the more difficult it becomes. It has been done, but there's a need for linguistic support in those cases. But there's a need for local authorities to set out clearly how they intend to put that provision to work over the next 10 years. I think that comes that outcome too. If you wish, I'll share the document with you on the chat so that you can go over and have a look at what the guidelines are. But to reiterate my call, if anyone would be willing to help us as an organisation to look at the elements and those messages to the communities, I would love to receive any support. Thank you. Thank you very much, Eileen. It's good, isn't it, to see how Rhagan, the Centre for Welsh Learning, obviously giving attention to different languages, and as you mentioned, Eileen, the importance of communication and trying to ensure that we understand the perspectives of people from different backgrounds, because maybe the old arguments that are used have been tailored really for non-Welsh speaking Welsh people and English people, basically, and don't really consider different backgrounds, more diverse backgrounds. Before, I'm not sure to what extent Catherine or Izzetti or Gosia, I don't know if they've closed their videos because they're doing something else, or I can see you, Izzetti, thank you. But I would like to maybe ask the three of you, Gosia, Izzetti and Catherine. Izzetti, you mentioned one of the things that was of concern to you was Idris, that Idris should maintain his Bruneian, and that he stuck to that. Because I imagine it's important, one way for Welsh medium schools to feel more welcoming for families of different linguistic backgrounds is that there is a place to be maintaining, Swahili, Brunei, Polish. How can the schools help you to maintain your home language or language of your backgrounds? Would the three of you be able to maybe say something about that? Because usually that language is important. So why don't you start, Izzetti, and then it'd be nice to hear from Gosia and Catherine as well.
Well, bananas,
Well, to be honest, he hasn't gone to school yet. He's still in the nursery. But at the nursery, there are lots of activities. He's showed a number of things like international to them. Lots of activities have shown the children that there's many different backgrounds in the world. I'm not really worried with that because when I work with the migrant as well, and I've seen how they've tackled this. And I'm not sure about everyone else, but with Welsh medium education, I feel confident with how they show that people come from different backgrounds. What about the Bruneians specifically? That's what would be good to hear about, as he gets older. Opportunities to support that. Do you see that as something you would like to see in school, or with the support of the school, or is that something for you as a family to think about? I believe that's something for the family. In in the home, I'm always talking to my family on FaceTime and so on. And I try to travel back to Brunei once a year. Well, not for 2 years, but I have showed Idris that he has another background as well, not just his Welsh heritage, because Brunei is a very small country, so it's very difficult to for a school to know what the culture of Brunei is. So yeah. Okay. Thank you. Good to have your experience and your perspective, Catherine or Gosia.
Assumption is wrong. My iaith
Some language of the children is English because that's the language around them. The language of the home, in my case, is Polish, but my children go to online Polish school. They could go to Poland to sit their exams. But in most cases, I would say English is the most common language for children, not for parents, but for children. So that was because with my son, who has gone to the Welsh-medium school, that was nice. They were Polish and proud, and that was in school, was something to celebrate. So a teacher to say, "Dzień dobry, bore da," to acknowledge that that is that person is there is a Polish person there. But my son's strongest language was English at the time, and I know in the Polish community in Cardiff this is the case. Really, English is the stronger language for children. Thank you. Catherine, would you like to say anything? Thank you. Well, same thing as Gosia, really. The stronger language of my children is English because, well, because of colonization in Uganda, the education system in Uganda was there are many languages in Uganda, more than 40 languages in Uganda, but my children can't go and stay for enough time to learn Ugandan languages. That's why they just learn Welsh, because we feel it's important for them to have the experience of learning another language. But in the school, they learn about other countries. But once I remember my son said, "I'm not sure why people ask me why I am brown, or why my skin is brown." And he said, "Why don't you say your mum comes from Uganda?" And he said, "Okay." Then there was quite a bit of a lesson about Uganda. They prepared a lot of things about Uganda, the food, the culture, many other pieces of information. And then there was this idea of learning about other languages from Africa, like Nigeria. There's just 2 pupils who come from Africa in Ruben's class. So just once I remember they learned about Uganda. Yeah. Thank you, Catherine. Olwen, your hand's been up for some time, and then Eileen can join in.
Diolch, Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm excited a bit there, saying to Healy, Catherine. I understand a bit as Healy, but I'm not sure that's correct. It's nerve-wracking, isn't it, speaking another language? I just wanted to expand a bit on what Elin was saying there, and I think she's perfectly correct. Welsh government, there has been a grant for years now in order to promote English as an additional language. I think although that's what's been written lately, across Wales, there is an awareness that that isn't just for the promotion of English as an additional language, but Welsh as an additional language as well. And the Wales situation is very complex, isn't it? What we do in Cardiff is going to be completely different maybe to what staff doing my job do somewhere like Ceredigion or Gwynedd because of the education system and the system of Welsh and bilingual schools. But that grant does exist. Welsh government threaten every other year that grant is going to disappear. So it is very difficult to plan strategically for the future. But I am sure that it's in place for the next 3 years. But it is there definitely for Welsh and English as an additional language. But as Elin says, I think we as a team working within that grant need to have an internal discussion to promote this work, that element, and just to have a discussion to find out whether there's something we can do as a group who are employed by that grant to ensure that we're aware that these individuals have the same rights to a system of Welsh medium bilingual English education as there is across Wales. In case we're not putting that message across fairly, it is there, but I think it just depends on who's promoting the Welsh language in the different areas which maybe have traditionally supported the English system only. So that's a piece of work I'll look at. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Because obviously you're part of a network that extends across Wales, supporting children with, well, English as an additional language or Welsh as an additional language. I see Helen's hand is up there as well. She also does your work in Gwynedd. So maybe, Elin, would it be good for us to have Helen first, in case it connects more closely to what Olwen just said? Because maybe, yeah, so you say first, Helen, what you want to contribute. It's good to see you again after a while.
My camera's not working properly, which is why I haven't had it on before. But anyway, I work for the same organisation as Olwen, but our situation is very different in Gwynedd and Anglesey from Olwen. And across Wales, we've found through our district across Wales that the situation is very different. So in Gwynedd and Anglesey, the choice for the parents is not which school shall we send our children to, because all the schools are Welsh schools. So there isn't a choice at primary school whether it's Welsh medium or not. But the choice then is for which language do we teach the children first? Do they learn Welsh or do they learn English first? And if you're going to learn the two at the same time, what input do they get? And do we withdraw them from the classroom? Do we withdraw them from the curriculum to learn both languages in order for them to be able to access the curriculum? So that's our debate in Gwynedd and Anglesey. And then I'd like to go back to something that Ruth said earlier about the children being able to speak English and Welsh if they go to a Welsh medium school. That's always a debate, and I think we need to have a lot more research across Wales into what happens to children who are learning both languages at the same time. There is research a lot across the world, obviously, about bilingualism, but there's a lot more needs to be done about this situation here in Wales. You know, do the children pick up English because it's spoken around them, or do they really need the formal input so that their standard of English is at the same level as across Wales as well? There's a lot of questions around it, and it's interesting if people have got time and energy and money to do that research. It's there to be done. And there was one other point that I wanted to make, that there are children across Wales as well whose parents really are not in a position to support them in any language because they're working long hours, or we've had a lot of children in Gwynedd and Anglesey, well, Gwynedd particularly, whose parents really haven't got time and haven't got energy and haven't got the capacity to support their children in school anyway. And that's another issue that we need to look at as well. So there's a lot of things. I mean, it's a very complicated situation across Wales. And I think, like Ellen said, we need to be sure that we are incorporating all of Wales when we're talking about the situation. Thank you.
Yeah. Na, diolch, Helen.
Thank you, Helen. It's so important, isn't it? The situation in Wales is so varied. Would you like to come in first, then? I see Gareth has his hand up as well, so we'll turn to Gareth afterwards. Elin? I'd like to follow on from your question to Gosha and Catherine and Izatsi. I wanted to ask you three a question again. Can you see barriers in terms of how Welsh medium education is promoted currently to your linguistic communities? Is there something obvious where you feel like you've heard this within your linguistic community that prevents parents from considering Welsh medium education, or even is there a process that is preventing a lack of forms in your own chosen language, or is there anything that's come up that you've come across or on your journey that has prevented you or prevented people within your community who I would be interested to learn?
If I can start. So I think in Polish community, as far as I'm concerned, what I've seen is that Welsh is useless. And there's not much interest because, as I said, they can't see English is the language to learn because they don't very often. Parents don't have English, like the acceptable standard of English. So for them, that's the goal. And Welsh is like invisible. You can see that when you go around, you just get used to the signs and you just you stop seeing them. Even in Cardiff, English comes first. So you need to read English and you just learn how to just disregard the rest because it's like the gibberish, you don't want to, nobody knows that. That's the common perception, I would say. And we're sending kids to a Welsh school. In my Welsh class once, one person said, we were thinking about sending, they were Welsh and learning Welsh, and they said, we're thinking of sending our kids to a Catholic school, but then we thought it was a bit extreme. So I think it can be applied to Polish people thinking of sending the kids to the Welsh school. And there's not much, they worried about English because they don't know what's going on in a Welsh school. They don't know they actually in a bond, they bilingual. Thank you.
Yeah, Gosha.
Thank you, Gosha. Very interesting.
Dwi'n o'r un peth fel Gosha.
I am the same as Gosha. In Brunei, my parents think, oh, what about English? But I've told them it's important for him to know the language of his father as well. But yeah, Idris can speak in English as well, in school as like a second language. They just worry that he doesn't have an English accent. Like in Brunei, an English accent or an American accent is important to them because that means they're,
maen nhw'n gallu siarad
it means
Saesneg.
they can speak English. So they do worry about that, but I've said that it's fine because he's just gonna talk like me, talking English with a Bruneian accent and speaking Welsh. Bruneian, yeah. So thank you. That's very interesting. You know, the perception of the older generation is still very important to us, isn't it? Because we have to continue to justify our choices as children, even though we've grown up ourselves. But yeah, language status in the eyes of people, that's important as well, isn't it? And interesting what you say there, Gosha, you know, saying that maybe people ignore the Welsh language because the status of the English language is so important. So I think we've got work to do there, haven't we, in terms of showing the status of the Welsh language, you know, the equal status in Wales that we're meant to be displaying, and doing more work on that, I think, with other linguistic communities. So, just to say, I think people treat Welsh like you go to IKEA and it's there, but you just ignore all the other languages. Well, there's a comparison. Yeah. Well done. Thank you, Gosha. That's made me realize straight away what's it. Although I do try and say a couple of Swedish words every now and again. I've got friends in Sweden, so I can't ignore that. Catherine, what about you? Would you say that your experience is similar? Well,
And say snake now.
I'm going to speak in English now.
So my children think of themselves as Welsh first before anything. And they think of me as the outsider, the one from Uganda. So it's different from the two of you. They're Welsh first, and they say, "Mommy, you're not Welsh, you're from Uganda." So English is I suppose, their first language because I speak English, and we have the influence of English in Uganda because of the British influence. So I speak English, and I speak English to them because they haven't had the chance to be in Uganda long enough to learn any of the languages. So English is the language, but they feel Welsh more than anything. They feel that that's who they are. And I think learning about not just the language, but the culture that comes with it makes them feel even more Welsh. You know, everything to do with rugby, the sports, the things you learn in school, the chwedlau and all those stories, that they just feel that that's part of who they are, and so they're really proud. But then it's interesting because they think of Welsh as well as what we speak in school, because they don't think of it as a language you can just enjoy. They think, oh, they force us to speak Welsh all the time, even when we are playing. I mean, why don't they just let us speak what we want, you know? And that's a shame that they think of it that way, that they kind of think we're out of school now, we can relax, we don't need to speak Welsh. So that's my experience.
Diolch, Catherine. A diolch, Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Elin. Gareth has been waiting. Thank you very much, Catherine. I'm very thankful. It's a privilege to be part of this discussion and listening to everyone with all their experience. You know, I want to note, you know, the sources in terms of streaming. The main challenge we have with moving forward, and certainly as Elin has raised with Cascade in every county across the country, schools are becoming more and more independent. You know, their processes according to the acts allow them to stand as individual units, and all the services and networking and stakeholders have far less influence. We in our counties we had teachers who Welsh education grant. And it may be that there's a difference in opinion here, but the specific purpose to report back to Welsh government on processes happening locally, and one of the local processes was to provide service for latecomers from overseas countries and people from ethnic minority backgrounds. Since cancelling that grant, a number of countries have lost the provision for latecomers and language centres because there's far more freedom. If you look at the education improvement grant model, there's far more freedom there to distribute all the funding to the schools individually, and that's where their independence is. All the grants and sources of finance are reaching the schools, and as a result, there is no local education authorities have no funding to provide any provision or services for them. But as Ellen says and acknowledges, the statutory responsibility lies with the county. So they have the statutory responsibility, but they don't have the funding to actually realise those targets provided within the framework. So nothing will change because all the funding will fall into the school budgets and not in order to support services from the stakeholders and the county level services and so on through the Cysga targets. Do you understand what I'm saying, Ellen? That's the truth of the matter, unfortunately. But I think we do need to differentiate here, from my experience as a governor as well. We have to differentiate here. The English as a second language budget is distributed to separate bodies, I think, and the point I wanted to make, and which Olwen made, is that there's been a misunderstanding, I think, across Wales, that funding is not also available for Welsh as a second language, as well as the funding for latecomers. And we know now that there's also an additional funding being allocated, 100,000 for each local authority. And we hope that that funding will be one for the next 3 years. That's the hope, fingers crossed. I think we have to acknowledge now, we can't now depend, we've got learners arriving with us who don't have English, who don't have Welsh. And going back to a question asked by Helen, I think, the point Helen raised regarding, which language do we give to this learner first? Who makes that decision? The decision has so far been made without asking them in our area. It's been English first because English is the majority language within the community. I don't know if that's been officially recorded anywhere, but it's been done without asking. My argument is we have to change that system. We have to now find a system where we can, and it's been done in other countries, where we can adopt English as a second language and Welsh as a second language, or a third language, or two languages at the same time, but reflecting, as Helen said, I think it has to be much more scientific, this decision on what the majority language is. And hopefully this forum will give us the opportunity to look at more scientific ways of coming to that decision and helping and supporting without putting too much pressure on anyone. We've come to the point where we can't afford to say, oh, well, it's only you and you and you who are allowed to learn Welsh. The Welsh language has to be available to everyone, and we have to create the environment across Wales where the Welsh language is available for everyone. Okay, well, those are great words to close our discussion today. The Welsh language has to be available for everyone, but as we've discussed today, the situation is so different, isn't it, in different areas of Wales. That provides a challenge in itself. One of the things I think we are keen to be doing as a network and as a group of people who come together, and it's excellent that we are getting so much support as this is trying to find out what the solutions are. Where do we go in terms of moving this agenda forward? And it's likely that there'll be many different answers and many different aspects that need to be dealt with. Olwen has put in the chat again this idea in the previous session in terms of a body that can influence on the field, because one of the difficulties is that there is great inconsistency in different places. But what's been excellent about Gosia, Catherine and Izatzi's contributions this morning is that they help us to gain a better understanding of experiences, because the experiences of people can be very different and varying. But also, as Carolina's research says, you do find patterns as well. Sometimes there are differences between different groups, depending on what the values of those groups, what's important to them, to what extent people have contact or understanding of the Welsh language. So I think maybe we need to be deciding where's the priority going to be here in terms of raising awareness. To what extent would there be a role for officers such as Helen and Olwen in the network supporting under the migrant, as it's used to be, with that direct contact, but also what about people who, as we heard earlier, if someone's coming with a visa from Hong Kong, and so the support doesn't seem to exist for those people. So there's so many different things that we need to start to look at in more detail, and that may be our opportunity in the next session. The intention with the two next sessions will be to look more specifically also at the education sector. So our focus next time will be the primary sector, but contact us, get in touch with post@iaith.cymru if you are keen to share information. I'll just put that in the chat now. Yeah, if you want to share any information, it would maybe be an opportunity for us to learn more about what Rhagworks are planning to do with different languages. Maybe Elena and Dara, you mentioned the census work, but also thinking structurally, it's obvious that the way the education system is funded and support to people, how that's funded is an important element of the context. It'd be interesting to hear more about that. But I'm also getting the feeling that it's important also to have the evidence regarding, what first language, or because there's extensive research on simultaneous or consecutive or successive bilingualism or bilingual acquisition, language acquisition, one after another, or acquiring two languages at the same time. And it's possible that what's appropriate would depend on the context. Many of us are aware that even if children pick up languages without us even trying sometimes, especially with English, it's so easy to pick up. So I would think there would be different responses from different sources, and how do we coordinate that? So I don't know if there's any big questions, but I think it's a good opportunity for me to say a big thank you once again to Gosia, Catherine and Izatzi. Having your contributions has been so valuable today. So very many thanks to all of you, and thank you also to everyone for your contribution. So we'll keep in touch, and let us know if you think it's important for us to focus on a specific element, or if you want to share information, because this is a forum for us all to be able to do that, especially as well as thinking, in terms of moving forward, what should we be focusing on? So with that many words, thank you very much to you all.